So I did a lot of time in the Navy. I talked a couple stories about it very briefly. But there's one thing in the Navy that is repeated in gunfighting school. And I think I probably know more about gunfighting than human behavior. And uh, it's being brilliant on the basics. Brilliant on the basics. So we think like, I'm going to go to this advanced gunfighting school that is literally run by the founding members of SEAL Team 6, which is out here in a town called Blackstone, Virginia. That's where all kind of the little secret gun schools are. And in this school, you think I'm going to learn some really cool techniques, like from John Wick. That's what I'm going to be learning. And we get there, and you're standing there for 8 hours, dropping a magazine out of a pistol, and putting a new one in, and seeing how fast you can get it. Drop it, put a new one in. Drop it, put a new one in, and that's it. That's 8 hours. And they film you with slow motion, expensive slow motion cameras. And then you spend the entire next day, 8 hours, watching yourself and talking about these micro muscle movements to shave hundredths of a second off of these little things, because that's what's gonna save your life, not the John Wick cartwheel shooting maneuvers. And so the whole concept of that is being brilliant on the basics. So if I just understood the basics, what would happen if you took just a college level class? And I'm hoping, I've taken a lot of psych classes in college. What we've talked about in the last few days is more than I learned in like the first 3 to 4 years of college in psychology. But what if you just took that class 100 times, Psych 101, and it got a little bit deeper and a little bit more into your bones every single time? You become brilliant on the basics, and you'd probably higher on a skill level than a PhD psychologist, just because the basics, you had a mastery of basic concepts. Um, the biggest mistake I think that most people make when they aren't successful is searching for more complex solutions to their issues. Like, the solution to this problem has to be complex. If it fits on a post-it note, there's no way that it could really help me. If it takes 5 minutes to cure my anxiety, there's no way that's real. It has to be fake. Uh, so if we didn't succeed, we don't want to attribute that to simple solutions. I failed because of something really complex. Complex isn't only just sexy; it's also part of our identity. So I think the single cause of depression, anxiety, and being unfulfilled in the United States is unmet expectations. And we saw that that sixth lever of persuasion is expectancy, and the ability for us to communicate clearly in a way that makes someone have an expectancy about what's coming in the future. So when we're talking about discipline and all this other stuff, I want you just to try on the concept of, if a kindergartner would not be able to fully understand the idea, then it's not the right idea. Things like make your bed, be kind, show interest in other people, wake up early, go to bed early, exercise, eat healthy foods, brush your teeth, take it one step at a time, don't put other people down, practice, enjoy yourself. You're in charge of your mood and how you feel. That's what we teach kindergartners. And I'm coaching 50-year-old people who still haven't, like, they know it, but doing it's another thing. And doing all those things is different than, oh, I know that stuff. I've heard that before. And I just did a seminar in Miami recently. Carol, you were there, maybe a few other
Yeah.
people. And there's somebody in one of the breaks. I come out of the bathroom and I get bombarded with a couple of people who want to ask questions. And this one guy says, I've actually studied all this hypnosis stuff before. I've heard a lot of this stuff before." And I said, "Oh, great, go hypnotize that person over there." And he said, "No, no, no. I don't know if I'm ready to do that." And I said, "Well, I guess hearing it before didn't do much for you. So let's hear it again. Come on back in the room, and you can go through it again. Maybe you'll be ready." So I meet the type who says, "I've heard it before. I've been through this information before." But being brilliant on the basics means that you can execute on them, not just talk about them. I can't, like, it's one thing that I can draw this on a chalkboard. I can explain it in a way, I can make a YouTube video about something, but being able to do it is different. And I think a lot of this we can think about as having a small rock in your shoe. And when a part of our personality feels unnatural or uncomfortable, somebody tries to appear natural, but part of their experience under the surface, like in the shoe, causes the visible appearance of discomfort and masking something that's being hidden. And that's kind of how I look at a lot of people suffering. I guess that I'm a psychological voyeur. I've wanted to like peek behind the brain curtain my whole life. I've wanted to know what's going on behind that person's mask. And we can do this with ourselves. So we're kind of exposing demons. And knowing your weakness is more important than identifying your strengths. I'll just go on record with that. You don't have to make a plan to deal with these demons, but you must know where they are. You must know who they are. Making a plan to deal with them, that would be priority 6,000 on your list. Priority 1 would be knowing them. And that way, you know when they come out and you know what they are. So next, rehearsal and repetition are key. We don't need to develop these new habits like people think. We need to just change how we think. So somebody goes to a coach and they say, I want to learn to eat better. What does the coach do? The coach says, here's the vitamins and minerals you need. Here's how many calories you need to be consuming every day. Here's a cookbook. I have a cookbook in my kitchen right now called the How Not to Die cookbook. It's my go-to recipe book. And so they'll do all of this meal stuff, but what's the domino? The domino is he should have gone in there and said, hey, I need help thinking more about my future self instead of me in the present tense. I just ate 2 gallons of Rocky Road in the last 48 hours, and I've had diarrhea for the last day and a half. So the present self is suffering because of the past tense self. So the domino there is not in I need to eat better. The domino in I'm overspending money. I'm not spending my time very well. I'm going to bed late all the time. I drink too much. I'm smoking cigarettes. Whatever the problem is, it draws back to that one domino. I need to go in and say, I have trouble prioritizing my future self. That's the one domino for all of those problems. But we tend to just say, oh, there's a tiny thing over here. The tires are flat, but we're taking it in and telling the mechanic that there's a problem with the engine because the car's driving funny. But there's a domino down there. And I want you to think of your brain and everyone else's as an artifact. It's kind of a collection of past events. And when we start rehearsing what the future is going to bring with positivity, we're rewiring the brain. And habits change when we change our behavioral patterns. And your body's going to fight really hard because it's a comfort machine. It's going to try to go back because those are habits. You're fighting against habits. And that's where you feel comfortable. That's just only in the beginning. So you have to know there's going to be some discomfort there. It's like learning to play any sport, learning to do anything that's new. There's discomfort followed by mastery. So what we're doing with rehearsal is giving kind of an out-of-body sample of the future. We're showing our brain, here's a sample of what the future is going to bring. And also we're mind controlling ourselves. I'm giving myself expectancy, that final thing there. And we just need to, if we're making all these lists and all this stuff, you're taking notes, just write down with a little star next to it, what thoughts do I need to stop forever? And just let it sit. Just read that every day. You don't need to make a list unless you really want to, but just understanding what thoughts do I need to stop also presupposes that you have the ability to do that. And typically, with most people, there's anxiety associated with change. There's anxiety associated with taking control of other people. The first time I ever learned like these, if you want to call them covert influence techniques, taught to me by a mentor of mine, and I used them immediately. I applied them everywhere. And of course, I was a 21-year-old kid. You know exactly where I wanted to use that stuff, which I did. And I was in a local bar in Waikiki. I was stationed in Pearl Harbor. And I started using a lot of these techniques. And these techniques are just to make a person open up completely and kind of make them a blank slate where you could persuade them to do whatever you want them to do. And this woman, girl, maybe looks at me and like her jaw has kind of dropped. She stopped blinking altogether and she's just kind of staring. And I stopped talking and I looked at her. My heart starts beating like, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking they're going to call the police. Something's going to happen. I'm going to go to jail. And after a few minutes, she looks at me and she says, "What do you want me to do?" Like she was just ready to go. It was like a command prompt on Microsoft Windows. Like you just type in whatever you want. And I said, "Just a second. I'll be right back and run to the bathroom." And I ran to my car and went home. And I never saw her again. Uh, Taking charge of another person is terrifying, uh, especially the first time when you start having authority and you see that it's working. There's anxiety. You will have anxiety, and you see that that stuff starts having an effect. Uh, and I realize that a lot of it's due to I'm uncomfortable giving direction, or I don't trust myself to give direction to other people, and B, I don't have an outcome in mind. I don't have a generalized positive outcome. Even if I just started the conversation and said, my only goal is to leave this person better than I found them. That's the only goal. At least there's an outcome. So I'm more secure when it comes down to this. But I think all anxiety is composed of three parts. So we have a physiological component of anxiety, which is the body's response, your heart rate, blood pressure, all of that stuff. We have a cognitive part of it. This is how we respond to the environment mentally. Then we have a behavioral part. This is something someone else can see or identify. They can see our shoulders go up. They can see us scanning the room for threats. They can see us freaking out, basically. So I'll give you an example. So you go into work one day and it's like 9 a.m. You walk in with your coffee and somebody comes up with kind of a concerned look on their face and they're like, "Hey, the boss wants to see you right away." And they leave. So then we worry and we have sweat. We have a increase in our heart rate. So we start having some anxiety. And all stress comes from a feeling of lack of control. And if you think of what PTSD is made of, the reason that we have trauma, all trauma, every trauma is rooted in a complete feeling of lack of control. So then we have this lack of control. There's a rush of chemicals. The brain says, okay, this is an emergency. So all attention and all thoughts, all focus goes on predicting things. What's going to happen? Is it bad? I need to think of everything bad that could be happening right now. And then thoughts become incoherent. We stop trusting ourselves and we're automatically looking for more threats. We go into the break room and one person is stirring their coffee and they look over their shoulder at who just came in. But what does their face look like? They look suspicious. They look untrusting. But that's only because we're in that mode. If we went in there in a great mood and they looked over their shoulder, their face would look different, even though it's the same face. People who are injected with really high levels of testosterone, I mean, their testosterone blood levels are like over 1400, tend to automatically see faces as angry or challenging, like posing a challenge to them. So our hormones and our moods literally change how we see everything around us. So what I would recommend is what's called a SGE. And I think it's a military term, maybe civilians use it. This is systemic graduated exposure. And systemic graduated exposure is prolonged exposure to stimulus events. So this can be done mentally as well. Remember that Serena Williams goes into an MRI machine and visualizes playing tennis. The exact same brain functions are triggering off. What if we don't even need to put ourselves in these situations? We can rehearse them mentally. Our brain sees it as the same thing. But what do we rehearse most of the time? Bad stuff going on. This might not work. This persuasion is not going to work. I went through that authority course, but I didn't really implement everything. It's probably not going to work because I didn't go through an entire 15 years of development. You don't need that. We just start rehearsing it, and then that's what we're teaching our brain to look for that and create that situation. So this anxiety will only last for a little bit at this point, and by role playing all these future events, we're neutralizing the effects of anxiety ahead of time before they happen. So there's a few reasons that we fundamentally care about the opinions of others, and this is what holds most of us back from behaving as an authority figure and exhibiting all the behaviors of confidence and authority. And keep in mind, my editor is going to edit this part out too, but I'm going to send you guys a video of all of this after the editor's done with it. So I'm going to basically try to crop everyone's faces out of this whole thing. That's why I'm recording it on a different laptop. So I can see everyone on this one, and my whole head is on the other thing. But that might take a few days to get you guys access to the recordings because the editor lives in London, and him and I are back and forth on WhatsApp or whatever trying to get this stuff edited. So I just want to let you know up front. All right. So the fundamental reasons we care about other people's opinions are the same reasons that we will be fearful to take charge or have some authority in a situation. And the first one is we're afraid of losing who we are. And we see authority people. I'm a kind person. I would never be authoritative. And we see authority as a negative instead of a positive. If you have a story that you tell about yourself, like I'm successful, and other people make you feel successful, then you can lose it instantly when someone discounts it and someone calls you a loser or someone says something about you. And so if your identity is rooted in what other people say, it's going to be very fearful to start stepping up. If you're in a job and identify as an accountant and you lose your job, then you lose your identity. So identity gradually becomes what we get from the world around us. So we make a story and we let other people decide whether or not it's true. And then we get to a point where our happiness is based on other people's opinions. I really don't want to make this a pop psychology class. This is literally how to influence people, but you can use it for whatever you want. So if you tell yourself a positive story about yourself, then you feel pleasure. You tell a negative story, you feel bad. And one of the next things here is that we're placing more weight in someone's opinion than your own knowledge of your identity. And I went through this when we first launched a YouTube channel that I've got with a couple other guys. There were like negative comments down there. And I was like, shit, that feels really bad. And I called this coach, same guy. He's the guy who trained Tony Robbins. His name's Jim Britt. And I called Jim and he said, how many negative comments would be appropriate? And I was like, well, I want 0. He's like, how many do you think Mother Teresa would have if she had her own YouTube channel, or Oprah, or anybody else who's doing like really great stuff? And it really changed everything. So like he said, if you're under about 30%, then you're going to be all right. So I think it's also imposter syndrome comes in. And just being aware of imposter syndrome is step one. Step two is what we talked about yesterday, or realizing that everybody else feels like they're faking it too. I have, John, whatever his name is, Malcolm Gladwell says the 10,000 hours of practice makes you a master of your craft. I've passed the 30, maybe 50,000 hour mark a long time ago doing research and doing this kind of work. And I still feel it. I still feel like, what if somebody finds out that I'm faking everything? Like, well, yeah, I went to Harvard for neuroscience, but I didn't learn that much. I'm not like the best in the world, so maybe I shouldn't be speaking about it. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it. So I just wanted you to know that even somebody at my level in my field, anyway, I still feel that, and it doesn't go away. But understanding that, well, I feel that, and so does everybody else. It makes it a lot more tolerable. Wish we get back to those 4 laws of human behavior that we talked about on the first day. So one of the best is to just allow yourself some time alone without any distractions, because a lot of people default to my name for this is psychological anesthetics. So this is Netflix, YouTube. I get up in the morning. The first thing I've got to do, even if I'm sitting on the toilet, is put on the news or put on a podcast or do something to where there's something coming in where I don't have to think by myself. Remember, we need to be in a romantic relationship with ourself and our future self. Try to love yourself more than your mom does, which is hard. I mean, it'd be hard for me. So everything you do here is kind of based on this premise that you're insufficient at the present time, and at the future I'll be better. And none of that's true. So if we all waited until we were perfect to start launching ideas and taking action, we would not have even come up with the definition of gravity yet. Isaac Newton would have dug a hole in the ground and waited to read all the books in the world. So if we put some time into understanding who we really are, we can write out the answer. The age old philosophical question of, who are you? And people say, oh, I'm an accountant. And then, the guy who thinks he's really smart on the stage says, well, that's what you do, not who you are. And then they just go back and forth for a couple hours. I think there's something to that. The person who's aware of that story of you that you tell isn't you. It's not the story who's aware of the story. It's you who's aware of the story. So you're the observer and not really the thought about it. And if you were looking at the story, it can't really be you. By looking at a painting, it doesn't make you the painting. Just observing something doesn't make it you. So let's talk about just getting through social anxiety and what it would mean for us. So there's 6 steps, which would be, number 1 is systemic graduated exposure. So I'm repeatedly taking baby steps outside my comfort zone, little small things, and collecting evidence like we talked about. And number 2 is cognitive restructuring. We're questioning our fears or beliefs about whether or not I can do this. Would it be okay for me to be confident in this? And number 3, identifying where we are basing our happiness out of, whether it's other people or us. So if you just want to take quick notes, source of happiness. And number 4, just figuring out, where do I not feel good enough? And is it absolutely true? And is that going to save my life if it prevents me from doing something? And number 5, identify your story and the things you do to get others to believe it. And finally, number 6, Make a daily practice of understanding which worries are relevant and what's not in your control. So, what I'd like to do is offer you an absolute permission slip that you have unlimited permission to go try all this out. You have permission to act in an authority. And remember, like, we're going to practice for a few days of not moving any faster than we would if we were underwater. So we're going to start doing that. We'll start using our bodies to trigger that belief in our mind that it is okay to be relaxed here. It's okay to be in control. So when the body starts doing it, the mind starts doing it. There's a YouTube video that almost everyone in the world has seen now about power poses and how you should stand in the bathroom and with your hands on your hips like a superhero, and it causes your brain to do certain things, make you feel good. And this is a Harvard researcher named Amy Cuddy who did that YouTube video. And I think that's wonderful, but it doesn't have to be standing in a bathroom mirror with your hands on your hips. It has to be moving in a way that's confident and composed. We talked so much about composure. What if I was just move my body in composure? No matter how, if my heart rate's at a 160 before I'm going into a meeting, it doesn't matter. I'm going to slow my body down. Let the heartbeat beat. Resisting it will make it stronger. So just let it go. But you are in control of your physiology, your body movements. So just slow down the body, slow down your blink rate or your how fast you're blinking in a conversation. So I've taught a lot of things in my life. One of the other things I've specialized in is brainwashing. And there's a 4-step brainwashing process that you can use on yourself to brainwash yourself. And it literally spells out fear, FEAR. Some of you guys are already familiar with this, but it stands for focus, emotional involvement, agitation, and repetition. So focus means I'm going to paste those pictures of my older self, like pictures of me that, the app makes me look like a 95-year-old. I'm going to post them everywhere. So I have focus. I'm telling my brain what's important. Then we have emotional involvement. I want to really, really dissect and understand the consequences of inaction. So what would I look like maybe I download the app that makes me look like I weigh 600 pounds more than I do right now. So I'm going to get emotionally invested in whatever it is I'm trying to change. And by agitation, this is something we've already talked about when we're talking about disrupting the environment around us. So we have our furniture's all in one spot. I'm going to spend one day, I'm going to move everything around in my house. I'm going to do something to trigger my brain and agitate my schedule. That way the habits start falling apart because the brain stops saying, I've seen this before. I've been here before. This looks familiar. This feels familiar. This sounds familiar. So this is like I'm listening to different playlists on Spotify. I'm going to change, if I brush my teeth with my right hand, I'm going to put it on the left side of the sink to remind me I'm going to do it with my left hand today. I'm going to do as much as I possibly can to agitate my brain so that it damn well knows that A, I mean business, and B, this is new. Something new is coming, so you need to pay attention. And repetition is what I said yesterday. If I could sum up brainwashing in one word, it would be repetition. So if you just do that 4-step model, you can kind of change whatever you like. And I would say that if you start journaling, like we talked about on day 1, if you start journaling, I've got one of mine right here beside me on the desk. I promise you, it is the greatest gift that you will ever give to your future self. And that's what a journal should be. And just becoming more aware of everything we want to invest in. So I want to track my behaviors. I want to track where I am on the pendulum. And the assessments that we did yesterday, that should be hopefully that was an emotional experience for everybody. And just going through that and understanding where I am and why. Why is it difficult for me to do X? And what would I need to change? What would need to be different? I don't need to make a plan to be different. I just need to know what it is. Where's that shadow that's causing that low number? And yeah, thanks, Robert. Robert says a pretty sobering experience. This yellow journal is actually a very specific kind of a mind control Manchurian candidate research book because I'm afraid to keep this information digitally. But it's a Sokia, somebody asked in the comments. I think it's made for people who survey land because it's made to be a surveying notebook. That's all I had on that deployment, though. So, a lot of people take courses for entertainment. And a lot of people take courses to say they took a course or to say, I've heard that information. I've got that figured out. You've made an investment by trusting me. And I'm asking you to reinvest back in yourself at the end of this. I would rather you be successful than to hear like this was entertaining or this was a great experience or this was life changing. I want you to get the return on investment, and then I want to hear from you like in a few months, and see how you're doing. I would honestly love to hear from you, and I think this stuff is kind of the admin password to people. Like if it takes 11 years to make someone stop eating ice cream in cognitive behavioral therapy, why does it take 35 minutes to make someone kill another human being who's a good person? Authority is the admin password. And we can execute it on other people, but more importantly, we can execute that authority over ourselves. And we don't need 11 years to do it. You can absolutely do this. You're capable now. You don't need another course. You don't need another book. You don't need to go read 16 more books on Amazon or watch 12 YouTube videos before you give yourself permission to do it. I promise you, it's ready to go. You are ready to go to do it now. This is it. I've spent a decade of my personal life stuck in the I need more information game because it is a game. If I just read a few more scholarly articles, then I'll be ready to move forward. If I just take one more course, I'm going to learn a few more things, and then I can do it. I did that for a decade, so please don't. I'm trying to pay it forward. You don't need anything else to start. And you don't need anything else to start exercising all of these techniques and start just kind of weaponizing your authority. And my absolute goal is for you to get like a 600 times ROI from this course at a minimum. And if you have any questions at all, please shoot me an email or reach out to me anytime that text number does go to my phone. It also pings my assistant. But I'm telling you, you need nothing else to get started. You don't need a course. You don't need to complete that online degree thing that you started. This is the time. Don't let your animal brain habits take over again because it's a game. You're in charge now, and you've got it. And I'm happy to take any questions you guys have.
Chase, I'll go ahead and get this started. So, the first question that I do have is that you mentioned something on Friday that is very close and dear to me, regards to like sales scripts and that sort of thing. If you're doing cold calling and whatever, and you told us how you tore their script in half and everything. So, along those lines, how would you go about using these principles and that kind of thing? Like, for instance, one of the biggest things is like grabbing that intention as soon as the person picks up the phone. Like, if I'm calling the bank for a business loan or anything like that, how do I grab that attention? What is that novelty factor that I can use to keep them on the phone with me?
Wonderful question. Thanks. I think that's a beautiful question because it really illustrates the difference between scripts. So if I'm calling a bank, the novelty for a person getting a bank phone call is going to be different than if I'm cold calling and selling landscaping services to people in a neighborhood somewhere. So I would say I've never worked at a bank, but what I would do if I was sitting there teaching you to do a bank thing is say, what are they most likely to expect when a salesperson calls them? It's like, hi, I'd like to speak to a person in authority, or I'd like to, can you transfer me to the branch manager? Can you transfer me to the division head or whatever? That would be the first thing. So anything that deviates from that and pretty far from that um, would trigger that novelty response. But I would have to know, what's the norm for that situation. And I'll give you an example that I am familiar with. I mean, we could sit there for a few minutes and work that out. But to save everybody's time, like if I am calling or cold calling somebody, or let's use a sales example in person. If I'm doing door knocking, uh, people know what it looks like and they're resistant to people knocking on doors. There's an alarm company in this neighborhood that does that called Vivint. And I bought them, but actually, Sarah can send everybody a picture. I brought the guys into my living room and gave them 4 hours of sales, door to door sales training in my living room. Uh, so she's got a picture of me training these guys. They had no idea who I was.
I'll have to dig that up. Maybe later on after I told them.
Yeah, but so what their goal was to get in the house, and they're supposed to identify themselves and then say who they're working for, and then all of that stuff. And I said, what I want you to do is I want you just to try this out for a couple of days. I want you to go to Walmart and get a cheap wallet, like a Velcro wallet. It's got $20 in it, a couple of business cards, random business cards. Go to the car wash bulletin board and like pull some business cards and stick them in there. Put 20, 30, $45 in it. And when you knock on the door, say, hey, we're just in the neighborhood installing some alarms. This was out near your driveway. Just wanted to see if this belonged to any of you guys. You have instantaneous trust. You're not a salesman. You have instantaneous, like you're the type of person that returns a wallet instantly. You have, this is different. This is brand new. I automatically know this is a trustworthy person, and the situation evolves from there. So we have tremendous level of focus from the very beginning. But I mean, that's just a one example. So anything a person's not expecting in that situation, as long as it's not ridiculous, like I'm not going to knock on somebody's door and start talking about like BDSM or something like that. But anything that they're not expecting, will let them know this is probably a different situation. And so I even told them, like, even if you have to knock on somebody's door and say, we're here to remove or cancel your account and take all your security systems out, and say, like, I'm here to take something away. I don't want to give you anything. That's the opposite of what somebody was expecting to hear. So that creates an instantaneous focus and lets the brain know I should not react to this situation like I've reacted to the others, because it's new and it's different. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just thinking, like, on a cold calling, like, like the other day I had someone call in from a famous hotel chain, and then they were trying to sell a package for like a timeshare presentation. And I was listening right from the get-go. I knew that was going to be sold. I'm like, really? Really? That's it? That's all you got for me? You know?
Right.
So yeah, and that kind of got me thinking. It's like, well, what could they have done to grab my attention even more if they were to, make it so that my sales scripts are not going off in my brain.
Yeah. So what if, I mean, and that would be the second technique that we talked about. So if I'm working for this timeshare people and I call you up and I say, hey, Robert, I'm here to talk to you about a timeshare, and I know exactly what most people think. Their eyes roll back in their head. You're going to go to some stupid meeting. You're going to get a free toaster, and you're going to sit through some boring piece of crap lecture. And I just said the word crap because you're not going to hear that from a salesperson. And I brought all of your objections, everything that you might be thinking, and pulled them out into the light instantaneously, and then said kind of a curse word to let you know I'm just a normal person like you. I'm not a regular salesperson. This is not a normal call. And that's the first 5 seconds. So that's the second thing. So we are breaking and doing some novelty there, but I'm also pulling everything you're thinking out into the light. And the moment I do that, your brain's thinking, okay, well, it must not be that. If he's going to say all that crap, it's probably not going to happen here. So that's the instant reaction. I'm sure you had a similar reaction, like, well, yeah, I would be thinking all that stuff. I'm glad this is not that thing.
Right. Right. Okay. And then my second question, thank you for that. That's definitely helpful. The second question I did have is, what are your thoughts on regards to people who have problems with figures of authority, who are resistant, like anti-authority, and how would you overcome them?
It would depend on the person and their behavior profile. But I would say that they're not resistant to authority because they probably listen to police. They probably listen to their parents and their teachers growing up. They're probably resistant to authoritative behavior, which is kind of almost dictatorial behavior. So, and I would default. I hate to keep doing this, but I'm going to default to Andy Griffith. That I think he would be able to, from a position of authority, still have a conversation with a person who is oppositional, or what we call oppositional defiant, for a lot of younger people. So I think that once the authority takes the place of the worry about status and hierarchy and levels, to where it's okay. I don't mind letting somebody feel more powerful than me. So if I have a person who's really defiant in an interrogation room, and the people I'm doing interrogations with nowadays, they have no idea who I am. Eventually, they're going to recognize me from YouTube, but not yet. So I might go in the room and I've got a piece of my shirt tail hanging out in the back, or I might trip and fall or kind of hunch down a little bit as I'm coming into the room. And it's okay for me to let them know that. If it's an intelligence person, I might mispronounce a word on purpose just so that they can correct me. And then I can say, wow, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. You're really smart. I'm glad to talk to somebody who's smarter than me in here, because usually it's idiots that I have to deal with. So with the significance person, or with somebody who's like this power, kind of a defiant personality, I want to give them that chemical at the beginning of the interaction. So it doesn't matter. It's not like if we start a conversation, authority does not mean in charge. Authority means you're 100% in charge of you. So I have unlimited self control. I can't control other people, but my self control is always going to be higher than yours throughout every interaction. So I'm happier, I'm more enjoying myself, and I'm more in control than anybody else in the room. And that means it's fine for me to make somebody feel powerful. So in that situation, that's where, like, in many times I have a golf pencil. I think I still have it, that I used to carry. I don't see it, but I used to carry a little golf pencil that was like this big, whittled down to a little tip. And I'd walk in and like just pull this little stupid nub of a pencil out, and I'd have like a Walgreens receipt because I forgot my notepad, and I would take all my notes on the back of this receipt. I would pay one of the cops at the police station to stick his head in there and yell at me. Like within a minute, I want you to stick your head and yell at me as I'm walking in, like I'm in trouble or something. And I'm like, okay, okay, okay. So that way, that person knows from the very beginning, I've got this person. And now, if I go in dominant, which is what a lot of people hear authority and they think domineering. If I go in some domineering manner, they go up. They need to be higher because they're worried about status and hierarchy. So the moment that I get them to stop worrying about status and hierarchy, they relax, and then they open up, and then they get persuaded. But any status and hierarchy conflict at the beginning will automatically produce negative results.
that's kind of like the police officer who, when they bring in traumatized rape victims, then the police officer will say, is there anything that I can get you? Because if they were to show off that authority, then it could traumatize them even further. That's just something I picked up from one of my police officer friends who, you know,
Yeah, that's what they say for most of those victims. No uniformed officers, no weapons,
yep, yep. So, all right,
no
thank you so
tie.
much.
You're supposed to take off your tie, roll the sleeves up, that kind of thing.
All right. So, thank you for that, Chase. I really
You
appreciate it.
bet. My pleasure. Anybody?
I would. So I'm a little bit off topic. I'm sorry, but I just need to ask that. So what would somebody need to do to work with you and make you more contagious in Eastern Europe, for example, or clean the dishes at your house?
So you've already translated.
That too.
Vince has translated a few of my books into Hungarian. Vince, let's get on a FaceTime call this week. I'll reach out to you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Hey, Judith.
On Monday, I have to give I have to lead 3 meetings with very high level people in the organization. And there's already conflict around the committee that I'm working with. And this was very helpful, what I just heard about they're very concerned about their status and their hierarchy, and that they look good to the folks above them in the agency. So I'm very aware of that, and that was a good thing for me to hear about making them feel powerful. But if you have anything else that you could share, I'm definitely experiencing anxiety to the point where I was going to write a word by word script this afternoon with some of these things that I've learned to help guide me through these. But I have 3 of these meetings on Monday.
Are you running them?
Yes. Yes.
So what if you, I mean, and you can paraphrase the hell out of this, but what if you would start the meeting and you said, I remember in college, I had a female psych professor, and she said there are 3 types of men, or there's 3 types of executives. That way you leave the gender out of it. And he said one of them acts like a baboon. And so then we talk about like how we are all primates. So one acts like a baboon, one acts like a chimp, and then one acts like an X. So you can replace that with level A, B, and C. You could just say A, B, and C instead of monkeys. But you just say that the psych professor warned me about the type of executive who's really worried about X, Y, and Z. So, like, you talk about the difference between a high functioning executive with maturity and composure and leadership and the other type of junior person. And you can maybe call them junior. Like, our junior people are worried about status, they're worried about hierarchy, they are so obsessed or they're so anxious about where they fit into a role. And, these younger people, these younger guys who had sometimes have to deal with, and you're talking about somebody else, not these guys in the room. These younger guys who I occasionally have to deal with are just so anxious about how they're coming across, and they're not really honest in their behavior. And you don't have to say exactly that, but just talking about how you're glad to meet with these mature people. And what if you just maybe during a break ask one of these people, especially one of the big guys who's worried about hierarchy and status, ask their advice on how to coach somebody that works for you who's obsessed with hierarchy and status. It's like, how would I get them to be more mature and composed to where they're not trying to out alpha everybody else in the room? I'm just having a hard time in getting to that. But what we're basically doing, I'm just giving you a bunch of different methods to say that at the end of the day, uh, we're basically dragging that stuff out into the sunlight so everyone can look at it right there on the table and go, whoa, whoa, that's not me. I'm not that guy. That's a douchebag. I'm not that kind of person. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they're automatically programmed to worry about hierarchy and status. And if they identify with that, they're automatically lowering themselves in front of the other
Okay,
board members or people in the room.
thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. All right. I've got a call, another Zoom call here in about 2 minutes and 58 seconds. But definitely, please send me any questions you've got. And this will be uploaded into our online training platform. So if you haven't created an account, please do so. It's free, training.chasehughes.com. And in just a week, maybe a week and a half, long term, you'll get an email that says you have been granted access to whatever the hell we decide to call this thing. And then it'll just take you right to your library in the training center, and you can go all the way back through these videos. There's going to be text notes in there. The presentation is going to be kind of overlaid over my face, like the editor is going to make it look fancy. So you can go back through this anytime you need to, but it may be a few days. Tremendously grateful to have all of you in here. I'm sorry I didn't get to every question in the comments or in the chat thing. I just now saw those. I'm tremendously grateful to have all you guys. Thanks for trusting me with your investment, and thanks for investing it back into yourself now moving forward.
Thank you, Chase.
Thanks, everybody. Please keep in touch, and I do mean it.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Chase.
you.
It was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Cyrus.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.